Right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this 10:30 session of the EventWell Digital Summit Day 2. I'm delighted to welcome Gavin Percy, founder and managing partner of Balancing Edges, who's going to be chatting to us today about getting ready for the future normal. I like the future normal. It makes a change from new normal. I like the future normal.
I was.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it. Love it. So this webinar is going to cover like the dealing with uncertainty, resilience, hope, optimism and positivity, returning to work and being kind, all in very, very important things and values there. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to the very, very lovely Gavin Percy. Take it away, Gavin.
Good morning, everybody. It is 11 o'clock, not 10:30. I just thought I'd point that one out. I wanted to talk through where I think the challenges are, where we are right now, where we're going to as an industry. This presentation talks about hotels, but it's as wide as the whole hospitality industry and events in particular. So where it says hotels, just think hospitality, really. A bit about me, first of all. So I am a hotelier by background and went into predominantly on the sales side. Had my own consultancy business since 2013 and been a mental health first aid trainer since, nearly 2 years now. And deliver mental health first aid training predominantly to the hospitality industry, but not exclusively. And as Helen briefly mentioned, here's the agenda for the session. Obviously, it is only a fairly short session, sort of probably just over half an hour, so it's not going to cover lots of things in depth, but it'll hopefully give you a good idea of where we need to get to, in my view. So the first thing is a great quote here, which I use quite a lot. When you can't change the direction of the wind, adjust your sails. And obviously, we can't change the direction of the wind. We can't change the direction of travel. What is happening. But what we do need to do is adjust our sails accordingly and not just let the wind blow us in the wrong direction. So that's my reason for being at the moment, really, is looking at how you can change either your business or your skills or the way you do things to get through this pandemic. I just thought I'd give us some background now. So this is a couple of slides now from BVA BDRC, who do a survey on a weekly basis. I've been doing that since before the start of the pandemic to get an idea of where people think we are. And this shows what the feelings are about where we are in terms of the pandemic. So the worst is still to come, the worst is past, or things are going to stay the same. Now, as you can see, since the 4th of May, when the Prime Minister mentioned that we're back to reopen society, effectively things are going to stay the same, have more or less stayed the same. The worst is still to come has recently jumped up to 41%, and it was down at 32%. And the worst has passed is going down, unfortunately, to 21%. So a little bit more pessimistic than we perhaps were a short time ago, which is a bit worrying. And then this is also a bit of a desperate story in a way. Is the worst still to come scenario? So when do you think things will get back to normal? You see the red there is the 2021 or later. Has increased dramatically over the weeks. During 2020 has also grown, but is going down the way a little bit since June. And then by September 2020 has also dropped down and is only at a very small percentage now. And there's also 7% of people who think it'll be 2022 or later. So all looking, I think the realism has kicked in as to where we are with this pandemic. However, there is some brighter news in that the businesses who think that they've already been impacted by coronavirus have stayed the same, 74% in April, 72% in June, and confident about business survival, 68% in April and 69% in June. So those figures are staying constant, which is a positive thing. What we're basically doing is the emotional journey through COVID-19 is reflecting the typical sort of psychological pattern that we experience during disasters like hurricanes and terrorist attacks. So we are going through this cycle of pre-disaster, heroic, honeymoon, disillusionment, reconstruction, etc. We're in the reconstruction stage now, signified by this blue dotted line. And after 9/11, which is obviously one of the recent disasters that refers to, things changed. This is a picture, obviously, of a security area in an airport. Before 9/11, we thought nothing of these areas. We just sort of breezed through fairly easily. Nowadays, we understand and we accept that we need to give a lot more care to what we put through these things. And we just accept that now. Initially, that was a bit of a shock to us, taking our shoes off and getting liquids taken out, things like that. We found that a bit of a pain to start with, but now we just accept it. It's the new norm. And the same thing's going to happen with us after COVID-19. There will be a new normal. Obviously, the 2-yard rule, 2-meter rule takes effect and may be in place for some time. Some things might take off, such as this. Other things, maybe not. These are some other ideas about how to socially distance in various areas of hospitality. But what are we going to have to get used to? We're definitely going to have to get used to the 2-meter distancing rule, or 1 meter plus inside hospitality. We're going to have to get used to the queues. We're going to realize we've got to queue and queue 2 meter apart. We realize that we're going to have to follow one-way systems. We know we'll have PPE. Will be a reality for all of us, and even in fact more so now, because we've been told in the last couple of days that we have to wear masks in shops, and who knows, that might be extended further. Plastic screens, we're used to that now, aren't we? Public toilets not being as open as perhaps they were before, and separate entrances and exits. More cashless payment, better cleaning protocols. This picture signifies social bubbles. It's the closest I could get on a photograph. But also, it's not just about social bubbles. It's also bubbles within the workplace, because we can, if we can't socially distance, then we should take care to make sure that the rotas are managing the people being on at the same time with each other all the time. And then here, also perhaps staggered lunches for staff in lunch breaks. So those are the sort of things that we're going to have to get used to over the coming months, and who knows how long for. Hospitality, obviously, we want to try and save hospitality, so we want to enjoy it. We want to maintain the distance, but we also want customers to keep us open. We don't want to be closed again. So we do need to make sure that customers understand the reasons for that and are on our side, and keep them on our side, and don't see it as a chore. So the government has put together 5 steps to returning to work safely. I'm not going to go through these in detail, but they are available on the government website, which I'll put the link at the bottom of the page. Effectively, businesses should carry out a COVID-19 risk assessment. They should develop a cleaning, hand washing and hygiene procedures. They should help people to work from home where they can, and make sure that they have the protocols in place to allow that to happen. They need to maintain 2 meter social distancing where possible. And also, where people can't be 2 meters apart, manage transmission risks. So things like the working bubbles that I mentioned a moment ago, perhaps staggering start times, things like that. So there's detailed analysis of that in the government website, as I say, and if people want to know more about that, they can go on there. But one thing's for clear, we can't carry on the way we used to do. And this quote from Einstein sort of tells us that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we use to create them. So we need to ensure that we and our organizations are able to recover from the current situation and bounce back stronger. We're going to need to take a different approach. And this is going to mean adapting our business models in many cases, as well as our practices and procedures. And this slide just really says, yes, great, we're going to have to change things. And yes, we are going to have to look at technology to help us make things better and less tactile. However, we need to make sure that our industry does not get rid of the word hospitality. In my view, we're here. A big smile, even behind a mask, and a welcome from the heart will always be more important than the best thought of app or the best thought of contactless check-in. whatever it might be. We need to make sure we don't lose that, in my view. Now, I've personally experienced a couple of things this week. I went out for a meal with my wife. Also, we went away for a night in a hotel. And I have to say, I think in those particular cases, the industry has stepped up. The training had been fantastic. The staff were brilliant in all cases, and were able to make us feel safe without making us feel we were in a hospital. So I think it's a really difficult balance to get. In my experience, those two places in particular managed to achieve that. And I hope that we do that throughout the industry. So yeah, we're all in it together. I think we all understand that, but we can all walk out of this stronger together. And I want to give you a bit of an analogy now. I want to give you an analogy about the hummingbird. So this is a story about a forest fire, a huge forest fire. And the terrified animals were aghast, anxious, watching the disaster. And the hummingbird was active, fetching a few drops of water with its beak to throw on the fire. And the armadillo said to the hummingbird, "What the hell do you think you're doing? You're crazy. You're not going to be able to put the fire out with those bits of water." To which the hummingbird replied, "But I'm doing my bit." And I think all of us can do our bit. So the hummingbird legend is one that I'd like us all to think about and see how we can work together to get us out of this crisis. However small a part we may play, as the hummingbird did, those will all improve things. So really it's looking at not looking at it as a huge problem, but taking it one step at a time. And what I'd like to talk about now is the way we could do that. We can do that by doing a personal best every day. So all of us should be trying to achieve more today than we did yesterday, trying to be better tomorrow than we were today. And that's the way we can get through this crisis, by all of us trying to approach it in a more positive way every single day and doing our bit. So if you think about elite sportsmen train every day. And they train every day to shave 1/10 of a second off their time, or an extra meter on their throw. That's what they try to do. They don't expect to beat the world record, but they do expect that they will achieve a personal best. And that's what I'm looking for from all of us in our industry to try and help us through this, is by each of us doing a personal best every day, doing our bit, being the hummingbird. But obviously there is a few flies in the ointment. So there is the uncertainty, and that's really the thing that's causing us a lot of angst at the moment. Uncertainty is a great problem for mental health. This quote, I think, is a very positive way to look at uncertainty. When nothing is sure, everything is possible. So maybe we should look at that. Maybe we should look at what we can do whilst we're not certain about the future. What can we point the direction of our sails in the right direction to make this uncertainty less of a problem and take advantage of that uncertainty in our business? Look at the positive side of things. I'm going to show you a quick video now. And this video is not COVID-19 specific, but it is about uncertainty. And I'm hoping that this is relevant for everybody. I think it's worth a watch, and it can say it a lot more concisely and better than I possibly could. So here's the video.
The world is an uncertain place. Things change fast, and it can be difficult to see what's coming next. But with the right approach, you can make things easier for yourself. Learn to be comfortable with uncertainty and be prepared for whatever the future brings. Here are 6 simple strategies for coping when things get messy. Fear is a natural reaction to uncertainty, but you can't let it rule you. Worrying about the future is pointless. So don't ask, what if? Ask, what will I do if? Knowing how you will react if things do go badly takes a lot of the sting out of the worry. Feeling out of control can be scary. So instead of fretting about the things you can't affect, focus on the things you can. Work out what you can do and do it. You'll probably feel better for knowing you're doing something useful. Being agile means you're able to respond quickly to differing needs or adapt to changing circumstances. Think about developing new skills, which would not only make you more valuable, but give you new career options too. At the same time, be alert. Stay on top of changes that could affect you and your business. The sooner you know about something, the quicker you can react. Uncertainty can cause anxiety and stress, which can damage your health and get you stuck in a vicious circle. Exercise helps clear stress hormones from your body, while meditation and mindfulness can help you relax and reduce anxiety. Talking to someone you trust can also help you find perspective. A problem shared is a problem halved. One of the greatest causes of unhappiness and stress in uncertain times can be comparing how we think things should be with how they are. But ask yourself, according to whom? Often, the answer is nobody. It's always good to have goals, but make them your aspirations, not your expectations. If you can accept uncertainty for what it is, prepare yourself for various outcomes. Address your worries head on. And manage your personal stress levels. You'll cope much better in interesting times. And hopefully, put yourself in a stronger position to deal with whatever comes your way.
So I hope you found that interesting. I love that video. I think it sort of makes it a very concise way of dealing with uncertainty. And I particularly enjoy the what if. Don't ask what if, ask what will I do if. I think that's a really positive thing. And we are going to talk about particularly stress, but stress and anxiety shortly, and how perhaps to deal with that during these uncertain times as well. So I'm going to talk about that shortly. So resilience is another thing that we need to think to build up. Resilience is, to me, summed up by this quote. This is a professor at the Hotel School in The Hague. Moving forward, so resilience is moving forward despite adversity in line with our goals and respecting our organizational vision. But she also asks us to ask 4 fundamental questions. What ways can we respond to the crisis? What action can we take to adjust to the new situation? How can we grow humanly and as a business? And how can we rebound during the recovery? So those are the 4 questions that she thinks we need to think about in terms of our resilience. We also need to think positively or optimistically or hopefully about the future. And again, I have another video here. This is Simon Sinek, who's obviously a very famous speaker on various topics. And one of his big thing is optimism rather than positivity. So I just want to show you this very, very quick video. And this is COVID-19 specific. It's a very recent post on social media. So let me show you this one.
Hey everyone, thought I would share a thought. In these strange times, hair and beard both getting long. Haven't figured out how to cut my hair yet. My anyway, one of the things which I preach as a greenhouse is being optimistic. This is different from being positive, and it's definitely not naive. A lot of people think that optimism is naive. It's not. Optimism is not the denial of reality. And positivity is about saying things are good even when they're not. So like, everything's fine here, nothing to see here, everything's good, we're good. That's positive. We don't need positivity right now. Optimism is the belief that the future is positive.
Yeah.
Gavin, there's actually a lot of feedback on the video. It's making it quite hard for people to be able to listen. So I wonder if you take your headset just for this video, and then maybe we can start the video again. No, take yourself off. You've gone on to mute, so if you take yourself off mute as well. And you just unmute. Sorry guys, bear with us. We'll be with you in a second. There was just an awful lot of feedback on that video. So.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, let's try again. Okay, can we try this now?
There you go. We press play. Yep.
Let me know how this goes.
Hey everyone, thought I would share a thought.
Is that better?
Yep. Thanks,
In
Gavin.
these strange times, hair and beard both getting. Haven't figured out how to cut my hair yet. Might take out the old razor and buzz it. Anyway, one of the things which I preach, as everybody knows, is about being optimistic. This is different from being positive, and it's definitely not naive. A lot of people think that optimism is naive. It's not. Optimism is not the denial of reality. And positivity is about saying things are good even when they're not. So like, everything's fine here, nothing to see here, everything's good, we're good. That's positivity. We don't need positivity right now. Optimism is the belief that the future is positive. We are going through a hard time now. Times are tough, they're rough, they're dark, but we will get through this together. That's what optimism sounds like. It is not the denial of what is. It is not pretending that things aren't good. It's simply the fundamental belief that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and we are heading towards that light. So be optimistic. We will get through this together. Take care of yourself. Take care of others. Talk to you soon.
Okay, so I think that was a very positive message.
Thought I would
very positive message from Simon Sinek, and I just wanted to add a bit to that. So we have the optimism and positivity that he talked about there, but there's also the hope. Sometimes it's very difficult to be optimistic or positive, but there's always a possibility to be hopeful. And I think that's at least something that we need to hang on to and look at how we can be hopeful for the future, despite the fact that things are tough in this industry right now. Things are tough for our businesses. Things are tough for our customers, which in turn will cause problems for ourselves, potentially, in our business. But there is hope for the future. And there's a couple of bits of quotes that I wanted to mention in the events industry. So Mark Taylor, the CEO at QE2, the business has the potential to bounce back relatively quickly. The resilience of the business event sector is quite amazing. And then from Chris Dogger of JP Johnson, everything we have been talking about and intending to do for years is now being accelerated, prioritized, and delivered. It is this dynamic productivity and adversity that will see us as a stronger industry emerge post-COVID-19. And I just wanted to really share those two quotes in the events industry to show that there is always hope. There is positivity to come out of this, and the strong will survive and the strong will improve, and that will help the industry in the long term. So as promised, I want to just quickly deliver a little bit about stress, because clearly all this, whether we're hopeful, optimistic, or positive, there is still a stress element attached to this as well. So I wanted to talk about, first of all, the response from a survey done by Stress Matters that nearly 4 out of every 5 event professionals said that the uncertainty of the future of their business or employer was causing stress. And 56% cited uncertainty around their personal employment situation. And this was done a couple of months ago, so I suspect those figures may have increased as the difficulty around the situation has become more clear, and also as the lack of clarity from the government around the events industry as well. So here's the stress bucket. I want to talk about the stress bucket. So everyone has a stress bucket. The size of people's stress bucket will vary. Some people with have very small stress buckets, and that overflows very quickly. Other people have big, huge stress buckets and can take loads of stress and strain before that overflows. So the important thing here is the stress flows into the bucket will gradually fill, and we have problems when it overflows. And when that stress bucket overflows, we have something called emotional snapping. And that will be the way that you have your stress signature, in fact, is called. So what happens is, in my particular case, when my stress container overflows, I literally snap. I get a little bit tetchy and I start arguing with people, particularly people close to me. Other people, their emotional snapping maybe, or their signature might be that they withdraw. They need a duvet day. They don't talk to people. Different people react in different ways to their stress container overflowing, and you will know what your stress emotional snapping or your stress signature is when that happens. Well, what we need some coping strategies to let out the stress, and we need coping strategies. We need a tap, and we need coping strategies so this doesn't overflow. And you need to find out what your coping strategies are, what works for you. In my case, I've got a few, but my main one is walking the dog. It gives me exercise, that all helps the brain chemistry, but it also gives me enjoyment. I take the dog out, he gets a bit of fun out of it, I get a bit of fun out of it, and while I'm walking I can rectify the issues in my head about what I need to solve and what I need to prioritize. But there may be other things, meditation, yoga, exercise, all sorts of different things in here that are good coping strategies. However, we're probably all guilty at some time of using bad coping strategies. Generally, this involves a good bottle of wine or your chosen alcoholic beverage. And unfortunately, what happens there is that just adds stress back into the bucket. It may not be alcohol, it may be gambling, or it may be excessive use of games on the video games, or whatever it might be. But those things don't necessarily solve your problem. They might in the short term, but long term they'll just cause more problems and add more stress back in the bucket again. For example, alcohol is actually a depressant, so that doesn't help very much. You feel bad the next day. You maybe don't get as much done the next day. You feel bad about what you've done. Those sort of things will add stress back into the container. And the important thing is to recognize what your stress signature is and stop yourself getting to the stage where the stress container is overflowing. You need to find those coping strategies, work out what your coping strategies are, and so that it doesn't overflow. Don't wait until your stress container overflows. We're not going to do this exercise today because there's not really enough time, but I would suggest you think about doing this yourself at some point in time after this session, is write into your stress bucket what causes you stress. There may be things in there that are always in there, maybe relationships, money problems, concerns about your job role. Those sort of things might all be in your stress container all the time. But there'll be other things that are in there just now, particularly regarding COVID-19, that may be in there for a short time. But think about what's in there and think about the things that you can control. And only really things that are in here are things that you can control. Don't have things in your stress container that you're not in control of. You can't change them. You can't make any difference to them. So try not to worry about them. I know that's easier said than done. And then also think about what your helpful coping strategies are and think about what your unhelpful coping strategies are. And then think about who could help you, who could you talk to, who might be able to give you some advice about this and what's causing you stress. And this is a good exercise to do if you've got team members as well. It's a good exercise for them to do. And if they're willing to share it with you, it might help you to understand what's causing them stress and strain, and maybe what their stress signature is as well. So you can recognize what's causing them problems and when it's causing them problems. Here's 16 ways that you might use as helpful coping strategies. It's not an endless list, it's a suggested list. There's lots of other things that can be added onto this list. My wife, for example, she writes a journal. That's on this list here in that column there. But it can be anything. It could be a bath with some candles. It could be knitting. It could be watching a game of football. It could be taking the dog for a walk. It could be writing a journal. You need to find what works for you and use those that work for you. everyone's different, everyone has different stress levels, and everyone has different coping strategies that work for them. This is an exercise done by Zurich, that was the insurance company. So they did a big survey, which the source is down there, COVID-19 Risk Outlook 2020. So they are saying that employers will need to manage the psychological effects of the lockdown on their workforce as they return to the office and factory. I think it's really important that our businesses do think about managing low morale, hyper-stress, general fear, and other aspects of mental health as people do return to work. It's really important to try and think about that and make sure that it's not just accepted that people are just going to come back to work like nothing's happened. Just to really point out the differences between stress and anxiety, there is a difficulty with some people to understand the differences. There are some similarities, and some of the symptoms are very similar, but this just shows you what the short-term access of stress is, and it's a response to a recognized threat, whereas anxiety can linger and may not have an identifiable trigger. And the symptoms are all there. I'm not going to read them through because it's there for you to see for yourselves, different things that can cause, that can show what's happening. What works really well for anxiety and stress is breathing exercises, and I know this has been covered by other people on this these 2 days with EventWell, but the one I think is very simple that I use is the box breathing exercise. And what this is breathing in through your mouth, through your nose for 5 seconds, holding for 5 seconds, breathing out through your mouth for 5 seconds, holding for 5 seconds, and repeating. And if you repeat that 7 times, and the Navy SEALs actually use this method in America, so it's been proven to work, it will make you feel almost lightheaded, because we don't use our lungs enough, we don't use a full amount of our lung space. This makes us do that. It lowers our heart rate, it lowers our blood pressure, it brings the brain chemistry to a positive outlook, and it will make you feel better. And it works in terms of sleep, it works in terms of anxiety, it works in terms of stress. So if you are feeling stressed, try that box breathing exercise. As I say, 5 seconds in through your mouth, hold for 5 seconds, 5 seconds in out through your mouth, and hold for 5 seconds and repeat. You'll find that really does work. If you haven't tried that before, I recommend it. So in the early lockdown, it was found that up to 37% showed signs of psychological distress, up to 45% felt adverse effects on mental health, and up to 70% this period was most stressful of their careers. And that was early on in the crisis. And I suspect that this Zurich report, if it was done again now, would find much higher figures than that. This is a bit of research I found in the sources there. This is a social health and safety company, and they've got a whole recommendation here about how people should return to work after the lockdown and advice for companies. So preparing for the return to work, informing their employees about the return to work protocols, preventing further disease within the business and making sure that people know the best behaviours, and then the recovery. I think it's a really good way of working. Nearly finished. The critical global risks have not gone away, but it is possible to see opportunities in the recovery. And I think that's something that we should all look at as a hopeful or a optimistic way of looking forward. This is the World Economic Forum. I'm not going to waste a lot of time reading this out to you, because you can see that there, and it is available on the World Economic Forum website. But what I like about this is we do have cause for optimism. How we get out of this crisis is deeply concerning. We need to focus not on a healthcare solution, but a recovery that's focused on the climate, sustainability, and societal risks. And I think that's a really good thing to look at when we're talking back. And they do talk about mental health in here as well. And then lastly, just be kind. So we need to consider the consequences of increased anxiety caused by the return to work. So there's maybe jealousy or envy of people who've been furloughed coming back to work. And also people who have been furloughed may be jealous or envious of those people who were at work. And those things may lead to tension, aggression, or even violence. And we need to be kind. And this is something that I stole off social media. So different people have different outlooks on life. And that's okay.
they're allowed to have different outlooks from you in life, and what we need to be is be kind and understand that they're looking at it from a different perspective. So this is just a list of different things that people might be doing, and it's okay. Be kind. And I just thought this was a really good slide to put in here, just to realize that everyone comes from a different viewpoint on this. There's a whole lot of resources on here, which I'm sure will be shared by EventWell. There's a 3-week course of an hour per week called Future Learn, which I think is really useful to understand about first aid around COVID in terms of psychological first aid. I've put EventWell on here. I always have EventWell on my resources because I think it's a fantastic website. Lots of mindfulness, lots of reading that you can take, and also some wellbeing tips. NHS Every Mind Matters is a quiz on there to find out about your own mental health. There's a couple of charities on here, Mind, Rethink, and Samaritans, that are always very good. Then at the bottom here, I put ACAS, which is working safely through the coronavirus. Think about what you're going to do now. Anything that I've talked about today that might help you shape how you're going to move forward. I would like to think about 3 things you're going to do now to perhaps rebalance. It might be, don't think what if, what do I do if? That's just one example. Think about your stress and your stress levels, and think about how you're going to look after your coping strategies. And if you want to talk to me anymore, then all my contact details are on here. I will be at the lunch networking session today, so feel free to join me at that and ask me any questions. And I think there is an opportunity for 5 minutes to ask any Q&A on here as well. So hopefully I can stop sharing. Here we go.
Brilliant, Gavin. Thank you so much. That was such...
I'm rushed on a couple of slides, so I got a ping saying that I was I was running to time. So no. I'm sorry if I got rushed, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
The last few minutes are slightly...
It was
going to get cut off me prime.
Just a little announcement for us to extend the event. That was okay. So it wasn't necessarily a ping for you to kind of hurry up. It was just that for us to add some extra time so we could go through some questions. Such a great session, Gavin. Thank you so much for that. There's so many takeaways from that. I don't know where to start. So guys that are watching, if you've got some questions, there are a few of you that are with us now. We've got 10 people in the session with us. So have a think about some questions. Great thoughts and takeaways and stuff there that are really, really important as well. Not really to kind of repeat all the stuff that Gavin said, but you know, that kindness that he's finished with is really, really important. And remember that kindness begins with yourself. So let's have a little bit less of this. Let's treat others how we would like to be treated. Let's start thinking a little bit more about, let's treat ourselves how we treat other people. So talk to yourself in the same way that you talk to your best friend or a member of your family or your mum, kind of stuff. You know, you give yourself that same level of respect.
So it's really important. It was covered a bit in the video, and I probably should have covered it more in the presentation as well, because you were absolutely right. It is a very important element, and it's so easy to beat ourselves up about things and not look after ourselves. So yeah, absolutely agree with that. Yeah,
we may think that people judge us, but we are our worst judges and critiques. Our little imp that's on go all day like that. It's learn a lot of the things that Gavin shared there. Those kind of coping strategies and things you can do are also great ways of silencing the inner imp or changing the rhetoric in terms of what your inner imp says to you. So remember that kindness and compassion to yourself. I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you, Gavin, in terms of kind of this future normal. Again, I really love that phrase, future normal, which is much better than the new normal. Future normal is better.
Yeah, I think it's because of the uncertainty. We actually don't know what it is. So the new normal makes it sound like we know what it is, but we don't know what it is yet. Yeah. So it's just future normal. It will settle down, and we will find out what it is at some point in time, just as 9/11 settled down. We know what that is now.
Exactly. You touched on it in your presentation, and I mean, all of us that work in mental health and wellbeing, which is why we keep banging on about this stuff, guys, is anxiety is going to be and symptoms of PTSD. So if anyone knows PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So you're going to see lots of anxiety, lots of symptoms of PTSD emerging coming out of lockdown. And we've been talking about this from the very beginning. So as soon as the government locked us down, there are people, Gavin included, the EventWell team, were all banging on about this from the very beginning, that this is what we're going to see if you don't put measures in to help people with their mental health and well-being, locking people down. So, it's going to take a while for that to go away, isn't it, Gavin? So how can we communicate the future normal well with our delegates and our customers? Because remember, for the events industry and the hospitality industry to be able to bounce back, we need that consumer and delegate confidence needs to be there, because we need people to come and visit our venues, visit our hotels, go to our restaurants, visit our events, even though the event industry hasn't got a start date yet. It's only for the hospitality industry. So how can we communicate that future normal well, whilst limiting pre-event and pre-visit anxiety for customers? Is there any tip?
Yeah, I think the difficulty with this is that everyone's got a different outlook on it. I mean, Lee and I went away for a night on Friday night into a hotel, and we were quite comfortable with all of that. And the hotel had taken relevant steps, made us feel welcome. There was clearly steps had been taken, but it didn't feel like you were going into a clinical hospital or somewhere that you couldn't touch anything. It didn't feel like that, and the hospitality was still there. And I think that's, if people did experience it like we did, they'd feel much more comfortable at going back in it again. But some people don't want to make that first step, and you've got to reflect and understand that. My wife is going to an event on Thursday in London, and it's a hybrid event, and she's going to the event because she wants to go down there. But you also have to respect the views of some people who don't want to attend a face-to-face meeting and are attending it on Zoom. So we have to understand that. And I think what we've got to try and do as an industry is find ways of helping everybody take active part in these events, even if they won't go face-to-face. So the likes of Remo, Remo seems a great platform for that kind of hybrid event. And there will be others that you can use as well. And I think that's what we need to think about, is creative ideas that we can use that are going to suit everybody, because not everybody will want or feel they can do a face-to-face. I think it will release, if people, like I'm talking about what happened to me on Friday night, if people are sharing those positive experiences with people, then other people who don't feel comfortable will start to feel more comfortable. And I think it will gradually get back to somewhere close to where we were. I don't think we'll ever go back to where we were, but it'll get somewhere close to where we were. And I see pictures of meeting rooms set up with 2 meters apart, and it looks daft, doesn't it, now? You think, well, how can you have a meeting like that? But it will become the normal until there's a virus, a vaccine for the virus. It's going to have to be like that, because you have to respect people who will not, who always want to socially distance. So I think it's a difficult one, because everyone's viewpoints is different. I think it's very difficult to have one answer for that. But I think we need to find creative ways of solving the problem.
I think it's probably, in a way, it's almost like, in a way, we need to get better as an industry about self-promotion. So as professionals, maybe that are working in the events industry, when we are attending events, we need to be pushing out those images on social media so people see people in meetings, in events, it's going well. See us visiting hotels, visiting venues, restaurants. Yeah, it's all about that self-promotion, isn't it?
And there's some great examples. If you go to Why Boston Lakes, they have a video there showing how people will be dealt with. So they're allowing cars to park only in alternate bays, for example. So every other bay is shut. And they've got a very good video really showing the customer journey to an event and showing how they're dealing with it. And I think if people just click on that video and see what they're doing, they'll feel much more comfortable about going to that particular venue, because they can see it's still going to be a good experience without any risk. And I think, there's never anything without any risk. There will always be some risk. But the risk will be minimised as much as possible, and that the right steps are being taken to make sure that risk is minimised. And I think that's all we can do. But I think that if you look at that professional video that they've done, and I know there's a cost attached to that, but they did it in-house. They didn't have a professional company doing it. It's all their staff doing it. Their maintenance man was a cameraman. They did it in-house, so it wasn't dramatically expensive, but there obviously is a cost attached to doing it. But it doesn't have to be dramatically expensive. So have a look at Why Boston. It's a very good example of and there are others doing it as well, but it's a very good example of what we do. Crieff Hydro today opens today. They've got 2,000 people arriving at Crieff Hydro. That's leisure travel, I know, but that could be events. And they've got a very good video on social media today about how they're going to welcome guests and what they're doing to do it. So I do think a lot of places are doing the right things, and I think it's those that are thinking ahead and being positive about the future and optimistic about the future. They're the ones that are going to do better because they're getting the message out there clearer. And it still won't suit everybody, but at least the majority of people will feel more comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And as well, you touched on hybrid models. Even if there hadn't been a pandemic, a hybrid model is a good future option for events anyway, guys, because if you take just my personal experience, I'm a mum, I have a little girl, I can only work part-time at the moment until she starts school, and even when she's at school I can't work full days Monday to Friday 9 to 5. There's lots of events that for my professional development I can't attend because I need to be at home with her. So even giving that additional option for audiences to be able to log in digitally to an event to take on that content, and you can monetize it, there's easy ways of being able to do it, is a good thing for events moving forward, and is actually something that a lot of us in the events industry have been talking about that we should have been doing anyway, pandemic or no pandemic. So allowing those digital audiences, which will extend your reach internationally as well when you go digital and you have those digital elements. So it's a win-win all around, really.
And it can be monetized. It doesn't have to be. It can still be a profit center. I know of an agency who were already in that market, like you're saying, Helen. It's not a new concept, and there's an agency who are very strong in that market, and they've gained some major accounts during this lockdown, and they're being very, very successful because of it. Whereas other agencies who've not moved with the times are losing business and not getting new bookings. So, there's a message there, about optimism and hope, looking at these new models and finding ways of getting that out to the market can help all of us. And they'll still need event management. They'll still need, people like us to get involved in those events. It doesn't stop the employment opportunities. It might change some of your skill set. It might be that you have to retrain in some areas and understand the platforms and maybe invest in those platforms. But that is still a hopeful side, and an optimistic side that we need to think about for the future. So invest some time in getting your skills set levels up.
Yeah, this pause effectively is a great opportunity, isn't it, Gavin, for us to reassess everything that we're doing and start almost with a blank canvas in terms of policies and procedures, isn't it?
Change the direction of your sales. Yeah.
I'm aware of social bubbles. My little one's in nursery. She's in a bubble at nursery. Schools, they have the kids in bubbles. So all parents are aware of bubbles and how they work. Do you think that social bubbles are going to be a big trend in events? Because nobody's talked about it in the events industry yet, about how we could put delegates in bubbles when they attend an event. So you've got like 4 or 5 different groups of delegates, but they're all together, but they eat together, they network together, they go to syndicates and sessions and stuff together, and they don't really mix with the other, keeping people in these social bubbles. Do you think, because it's been talked about hospitality, you've mentioned it in the presentations, do you think it could be an event thing as well?
I suppose it could be. The danger is, does that make people feel comfortable, more comfortable or less comfortable? Because if somebody in your bubble is displaying symptoms, then all the bubble's going to get it. But it is going to minimize it to that bubble. But is that solving the problem or not? I think more likely to be helpful is good protocols around who the track and trace thing. So make sure that everyone knows the track and trace is in place and that you can track and trace people effectively. But also that temperatures are being taken on arrival of the staff and of the attendees, because that will, in my view, be a more successful outcome. Now, again, that's my view, and maybe other people might have different views, and that's the difficulty, because it's not settled down yet as to what the right protocols are. But I think taking temperatures of people on arrival would be a very positive step. And there are technologies around that can do that. Again, why Boston? I happen to be working with them on other areas. But in my Boston, they've put in they've changed their CCTV cameras to be heat-sensitive CCTV cameras, both at the staff entrance and at customer entrances. And it flags up if people come up orange or red, then the security guards, security team go to that person, stop them entering the building, and have their temperature taken in a more accurate way to make sure that they are able to enter the building. Very positive step to take, and I think it's a very good solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a last question before we finish. So business owners and managers, how can they manage those anxiety levels of their teams returning back to the office, back to work, and in turn also manage their own anxiety levels? Because remember the old analogy, put your own oxygen mask on first.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it comes down to communication. I briefly had one small slide there on the 4 things, and part of that is preparing the staff to get back to work, and it's communication. A lot of it's about communication, making sure you do work. I mean, there's one of the problems you've got redundancies happening, and those people that are not being made redundant will feel guilty about those who've been made redundant, maybe have imposter syndrome. And you've also got situations where people are returning to work where they've been furloughed and joining people who've not been furloughed, and there's that jealousy between the two on both sides, because those that have not been furloughed are jealous of the people who were furloughed, and vice versa. So those things need to be managed, and I think it's about communication, about bringing people together and being open and honest about people's feelings to make sure that they're shared and aired and managed. And I think a lot of the anxiety and stress coping strategies that we talked about earlier are there as well. And getting people to fill out their stress container exercise that I showed on the slides, getting people to fill that out, even if it's just private and they're not sharing it, for them to realize what's causing them stress actually is a very positive thing. And then working out what their coping strategies are and whether they're helpful or unhelpful, and then using the helpful coping strategies, even if they don't share it. But ideally, I think that should be shared if people feel comfortable sharing it, and it can be talked about openly in meetings. So I think it's really important that there's a sort of almost an induction process takes place when people return to work, and that induction process does talk about the mental health aspects of it as much as it talks about work processes and procedures and protocols. The mental health side of it has to be involved in that as well. And as you said, that should apply at all levels in the organisation, from the CEO right down, because anxiety levels are obviously going to be heightened at the moment through all of this, and it needs to be managed at all levels in the organisation. And it needs to become cultural. It shouldn't just be an HR that says, "Great, we've done an induction meeting, thank you very much." It needs to be more than that. It needs to be something that becomes cultural. It needs to be something that's endemic within the business and becomes an automatic thing. How are you today? Isn't like, "You're right, yeah, you." It's not like, it's got to be, "Are you okay today?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And mean it.
Time to change. Have a great tip. They say ask twice.
Yeah.
So anyone that you're worried about, because their default response to anybody that says you're right, so it's yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
You ask someone again, they'll go, "Oh well, actually, it will more often than not, it will prompt someone to go, no, this happened, that happened," kind of stuff. So ask twice if there's anyone that you're ever concerned about.
And ask it as an open question as well. How are you feeling today, rather than are you all right?
Yeah.
The automatic default is a yes.
Yeah.
That's like that.
That's right, isn't it, Gavin? That they teach that in mental health first aid, of which Gavin is an amazing trainer for mental health first aid. As a mental health first aid champion or first aider, you taught to say, "How are you today?"
Yeah.
Just by adding that "today," just something different. It stops people going into that automatic autopilot response of "fine, thanks."
Yeah.
Just makes them think a little bit differently. That brings us to an end, Gavin. Okay. Thank you so much. Wonderful session, as always. We'll be sharing Gavin's details after the event, and this session has also been recorded as well, so that you can watch it back to refresh your memory. Thank you very much. Thanks for everyone attending. Check out some of the other sessions that we've got coming up today. Great speakers, as always, today. And we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thanks very much. Bye.